I don't even know what's happening right now, but
You think somebody has that
love it.
condom on their shelf today?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Muckspout.
What up, everybody? I'm Eric Cockrell. I'm with John MacLeod and Ben Cook, and we are here to talk some punk rock, some music, comics, some indie rock, and whatever else anybody else wants to talk about, I guess. So today we're gonna just talk about ourselves a little bit. It's our first introduction, so we're gonna talk about ourselves and some common interests, and maybe about where we might go from here. And then we have a comic that we're going to talk about as well. So
At least one.
At least. There we go. Ben, you want to kick us off with tell us about yourself?
Sure. I'm Ben, also known as Benjamin to my friends. I'm a musician based in Toronto. I play drums. Been in all sorts of different projects. My musical tastes kind of run the gamut. So I've done prog rock, I've done post rock, I've done regular rock. Now I'm in a space punk band and an instrumental band. Just trying to rebuild the Toronto scene after COVID, and it's been going well. There's a lot of amazing stuff going on in this city right now. And I'm very excited to start telling other people about what's going on in the punk scene here and the rock and roll scene in general here.
Awesome. How are you finding that in general? I mean, it seems like things are almost normal, like around here. I was kind of surprised how quick that kind of turned around.
Yeah, it's better than normal in my opinion. Normal was I'd rather watch Netflix, and that's pretty much out the window now. There's like a hunger out there. Every time I tell people, one of the other things we're doing is we're building rehearsal studios. Toronto kind of got crippled in that scenario. And it's kind of a blessing in disguise because a lot of the problems that were happening were too much corporate influence, I think. I don't want to sound all anti-establishment. It's just like, when the money gets too involved, then the music suffers. It's always the way. And it got into the rehearsal space business, and then they bailed, and it's kind of forced all the musicians to come together and start coming up with solutions. It's actually working really well. So it's definitely better than whatever normal was before this.
I feel like bands also kind of learned how to use the internet in the last couple of years.
The older bands did for sure. Yeah. Everybody like 35 plus is like, oh, fuck, we got to figure out Facebook, man. Yeah,
yeah, exactly.
For sure.
And I think that was a pretty awesome thing.
Yeah, 100%.
Definitely not. COVID was awful. I'm not going to, but it's nice that there was some pluses.
Yeah. And I think especially because like for 2 years we could be awkward online. And it was like, how does this work? I don't know. Hey, come here, show me how this, and we kind of got all the kinks worked out. Like one of the things that we did at the very beginning of COVID, once shows were shut down, we started figuring out how to record ourselves. And it took like 4 or 5 different iterations before we finally figured out how to pull it off properly. And once we had it, we were like, all our friends, like, come in, play, we'll record you. Let's get this going. Let's not stop just because, things are challenging. This is when art is supposed to thrive, is when things are difficult. So, yeah. And everybody came together. We really made it happen. It was fantastic.
That's awesome.
Out of curiosity, did you do any recording that was separate, like on Zoom or anything like that, or was it all in one room?
Most of the stuff. So we did a bunch of different things, but for the studio recordings, we had multi-camera in one room, and a couple of them were still, and then a couple of them were on tripods. And my bandmate and I would just kind of like move the cameras in the room. Yep. And give it a little bit of dynamism. And I mean, considering we were working in basically a shoebox, and there was like at times like 7 or 8 people in there, we kind of made it work. But we also like learned a lot about what we want out of our ideal spot as well. And then we did interviews out of there as well. that's kind of how it started. But by, probably by the fall, we started that in beginning of summer of last year. And by the fall, we were doing music festivals, going to live shows, album release parties, all that kind of stuff. And it took off, like not just us, but like the scene took off, and it's been at a full sprint ever since.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
John, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
All right. Hi, I'm John MacLeod. I do a little bit of writing, a little bit of editing, and I'm currently working with Bad Bug Media and Mike Tanner and that crew. And we're putting out some good books, and I'm having a lot of fun with them. And currently I'm working on a book with them called Roseblood Manor. It's like an old school horror anthology. And I'm also this is my year to find myself, essentially. I took the year off. They're one of my big focuses right now, but I'm also doing some freelance editing for friends and stuff like that, and just trying to explore the music scene. That's why this was such a good fit for me. I really enjoy working with you guys so far. And that's the basics of it. I don't have as exciting of a story as Ben did, but
it sounds exciting, but it's just moving shit around from one room to another, like for the most part.
I say that all the time too. People always talk, because I'm a video producer as of my day job, and so people are always like, "Oh, that's awesome," and like they're picturing like some kind of Hollywood shit. And I'm
Right?
like,
Yeah. Like
I aim a camera at lights a lot. Sometimes I get filmed. I love it. Like I love my job. I love what I'm doing, but like it's not what people think when I say it.
yeah,
for sure. Yeah, interviewing too is just a lot of asking questions. You gotta listen to their music, and you gotta figure out, what you gotta ask the question that's gonna get them talking for 15 minutes. So you don't have to do any work. You know what I mean? But I'm curious, John, like on the music side of things, why a music podcast? Because there's so many writing podcasts you could do, that kind of thing, but you chose this.
I've always had a huge just fascination with music overall, and I think it stems from my parents never had music in the house growing up. So like I think once I got my hands on it, I was just like, give me everything, absolutely everything. And I started with metal, and then I kind of progressed into more of a punk background, and then I love everything about it. And I had a journalism degree, and I have not used it much, but right out of college, I was working for a paper called Music Review that's in Western Massachusetts, and they're long since gone. But they were a great place to meet a bunch of local and regional bands and just connect to that community a little more. And I'd always wanted to do that, but I felt like, even the local bands are rock stars, and it's like, they're not. They're just people, and some of them are the best people you're going to meet. And it was just so much fun connecting with all of that 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 became one of my big passions. So that's where I am now. And I love, like we said, I also deal with comic books, but I also like that crossover. And that's what we're going to talk about later, is some of the comics that also encompass bands as their focal point, even if they're superheroes, even if they're whatever it is. That's what fascinates me. So that's the long story.
That's one thing. I don't even remember anymore, like when me and John started talking, but I know that one thing that John's always been great for over the last at least couple of years has been sending me links to comics and Kickstarter stuff, like about bands or inspired by music. And that's how, like, I pretty much always jump on those. Like they fascinate me too.
And when you find somebody that's a kindred spirit like Eric is, it's nice to know that there are a couple people out there that aren't going to be like, yeah, I don't need to know about that.
Right.
It's like I know he genuinely cares about the same kind of stuff that I do, and so that's why this is a good fit. So
totally, yeah, that's awesome. And I find that music and comics have always been intertwined. Like, music shows that I've been going to for the last while. If my band is playing, I'll bring some comics with me because I wrote a comic. I'm always like, do you like comics? No one ever says no.
Right.
At least of the musicians and like the diehard fans that are there for the music, they're always like, fuck yeah, I love comics.
Yep.
So yeah, there's definitely like, I think it's not a Venn diagram. It's just one big circle, you know?
Yeah.
I
I think it's the
decided-
same kind of thing. It's indie creators putting their passion into it. And it's
I decided a
just
while back
different.
when I
Sorry.
started working on Blister, I decided I wanted to try selling at a concert, and I was helping set up a concert in town with a band that I know, and so I set up in the front, and I didn't really know how it was going to go, and I got a lot of people throughout the night that would stop by, and we'd talk music, which was awesome. Like my comic is about a band, so we talked about some of my influences, and like they were interested in me, but they like were never buying. And I was talking to my buddy. He's at the table next to me selling for his band. And then he was like, dude, wait till the end of the night. Because I was like talking about like, I might duck out like before the last band and head to the bar next door. And he was like, dude, just stick around. And I did. And like all of a sudden there's a line at my table of people pouring out like, and because they don't want to carry around a comic book during the show.
That's exactly it.
We're interested. So
I always get the t-shirt at the end.
Yeah, right. Like there's some things like if I'm at a show where there's like a limited poster or something, I get in line right away if I want it because I know it's gonna be limited. But yeah, otherwise I wait till the end, and I don't want to carry something around the whole time I'm at a show.
Yeah, exactly.
But I do love that that mix. Like there's a cool crossover between and it goes like especially when it comes to like a scene like the punk indie scene, like when you look back at old underground comics, like Arcrum and stuff, like his art is used across all kinds of Grateful Dead and stuff. Like
Yeah.
that mix goes back like for quite a ways.
Yeah, I think that's like what makes a scene is it's not just, especially like with music, it's not just the music. The music has to be there, the art has to be there, the writing, it's like sort of a renaissance happens, where like all the people wherever their avenue is all kind of come together into one space and focus on like elevating each other. That's the whole punk thing is like, when someone falls down, you grab their arm and you pull them back up again. Make sure that everybody's having a good time.
Yeah. I've definitely felt that. So, I guess I'm primarily a comic book writer and artist. I've been an illustrator forever. I've illustrated some album art, and I've always got myself mixed in with the local scene, local bands, as far back as I've been listening to punk, and which is like mid '90s, no, early, yeah, like probably '93. So that's pretty much me in a nutshell. I'm a video producer and audio producer, writer, artist.
Well, I love everything. You're a polymath.
I kind of am. I might
That's
not be
cool.
great at anything, but I do a lot of shit.
Yeah, but I mean, you have to be pretty good at it if you're like doing it. You know what I mean?
It's been worthwhile.
Yeah, for sure. You have a nice camera, you have a nice microphone, something's working, right? So I'm curious, like in terms of like doing this, what inspired you to do this? Because this is kind of your brainchild.
Right. Like Muckspout in general or the podcast?
Let's go with both.
All right. So in like late 2019, I was talking to a buddy who runs like a punk merchandising, like custom merch and stuff. I was talking to him about like how I might be able to fit in my comics with his business, and we had talked about like he was excited about it. In the quick conversation we had, we were going to touch base later about it, and then COVID hit, so there was no like really changing of like inserting anything big into a business that was going to have some trouble for a while, like on its own. Like that was every business at the time. So
yeah,
I just thought about it, and I wanted to separate because I did like some superhero parody stuff before, and some other things, but I wanted to separate that from like my blister stuff, but tends to have a lot of swearing, and I was kind of heading in a more adult direction. So I wanted to have a brand that suited that. And then I kind of decided I wanted to kind of go all in because it's who I am. Like I live and breathe this stuff, and I just that's what I want to work on. Like I find, and it's I mean everybody says it, write what you know, and I do. Like my Blister stuff was a lot based on my high school, college years. I don't play any instruments. I'm not a musician. I have some guitars and I've played some guitars, but I'm not a guitar player.
I own a lot of comics. I've written one, so yeah.
So I decided to go all in on that area, and I just formed Muckspout. I was working with a buddy on doing some stuff with it, but it was hard during COVID to really get anywhere. So it's been kind of lingering. And then I was kickstarting Blister under
Congrats,
that label.
by the way.
Thank you. And I want to get that launched. And then am I synced up with my audio?
Yeah, you are for me.
It's looking a little funny on my end, so I wanted to make sure.
Yeah, I had a couple little minor like freeze ups, but it's fine right now.
Okay. I might in the future hook up a cable instead of running out the Wi-Fi. So I wanted to get Blister up and running and then kind of launch it with Muckspout. And then I've had some back and forth with printing my Blister comic. I finally have all of them coming in like 2 weeks. So I'm excited about that finally. But I was really like, I want to get them out to people, but I also have a punk rock music festival that I'm sponsoring at the end of the next month. So I wanted to make sure I had them for that. So
that's all you're doing right now?
Yeah.
Just publishing and releasing a comic and sponsoring a festival. Yeah, okay, I guess.
I just had to throw some money and share some posts for them. So
yeah, fair enough.
They're handling the brunt of that. But yeah, so I wanted to get that up and running, and then I wanted to get the podcast kind of up and running alongside it all, so we could, I could find the right audience to share stuff with. You guys have stuff that we could share things with, and other people have. I just like you were talking about earlier, just helping people up. Like anybody I know that's got something that's semi-relevant.
Yeah, and we've all got 3 different regions that we're in that we can kind of help each other out.
I like that too.
Talent.
Yeah, that's a big part of it for me. Is as much as Toronto has a lot to offer, I don't like being in a silo. I always feel like the best thing about music was that I could take things from everywhere and apply them to what I wanted to do, and it's become more clear to me as I get more involved with the Toronto scene how little I know about every other place. Because like half of the shit I'm doing right now was right under my nose. I just wasn't aware. I was too busy with other stuff or, just not paying attention. And now I'm thinking like, what's going on in Massachusetts? What's going on in Chicago? What's going on in New York? Or not even New York, what's going on in a small town in Ohio? I don't know. Yeah.
I agree with that. Like I find it fascinating, the different sounds in different areas. Like I definitely I didn't used to notice it because most of the bands I listened to back in the day were from Chicago. So I didn't really notice that they all had a very similar sound mixed in there. Like there's some kind of bass. All the bands get a little incestuous and stuff. So
of course.
But then like when right now I'm writing the story I'm writing right now takes place in the East Bay area. And like I'm a huge Rancid fan. I love Green Day. So like I've listened to a lot of the East Bay stuff. Like, and now that I'm working on that, I'm listening to a little bit of that more often because I get inspired as I'm listening to things while I'm writing. And like I just start to like notice that if some band I never heard of was played for me that was East Bay, I think I would be able to pick it out right now. Like,
yeah. Right. Totally. So do we want to get to the albums that we were talking about?
Yeah. How are we going to do that?
Who wants to go first? I'll do it.
Okay.
Sure.
There we go.
Fuck it, no fear. Unfortunately, I'm the only one of the three of us that didn't actually choose 3 albums. I kind of chose 3 bands, and it's just kind of like, I think it's just that a lot of the music I've been listening to lately has been from bands that are fairly new on the scene, and full albums. There's kind of 2 things happening right now, which is like full albums are hard to do when you're an early band because you don't have enough material. Yep. And the second thing is a lot of new bands aren't doing albums because the saleability of it is not the same as it was back in the day. It used to be the only way to market your music effectively was to have a bundle of it and you put it in a physical package. But now you can do it with each individual song. I was even noticing that I think it was the Linda Lindas. Every time they had a new EP or single release, they had all the previous ones on that new release, so that they were constantly being re-released. And I was like, that's smart thinking. I was like, note to self, I'm going to do that shit.
Yeah.
But yeah, so first off, Sprints, their new EP, it's called Modern Job, something like that.
Yeah.
Man, those guys are off the hook. Particularly the song Delia Smith was the one that hit me. It's the 3rd track, and it's just that little lead into the chorus when she says, "Who wants to be special anyway?" And she repeats it, and then she says, "Me, fucking me, and I'm not ashamed." I was like, that's the kind of energy I need right now.
Yeah. I had never heard of them before. So I loved when you shared that. I was like, as soon as I hit play, I was like, wow, I'm really digging this. And that the first track was really great. Like,
yeah,
just when she's screaming, "I'm not fine." I'm like, it's so relatable at times. Like, actually, that's one thing. Listening to the whole thing, like, it was insanely relatable. Like, that's just what it is to be human. Is that album?
Especially the last track for me. I'm in a band.
Yeah.
Oh my god, I love that song.
Yeah, it was 5 tracks of just pure energy. I was incredibly happy that you shared that with us.
Yeah, they're doing good things, and they seem to be fairly new. Like, they only have that so far, so that bodes well because if that's your first time releasing music, goddamn, I can't wait to see.
Yep.
Once you get to a full sprint. No pun intended.
You planned that. Come on.
Nailed it. All right. What about you guys?
So I had narrowed it down to that Interrupters album that came out like 2 weeks ago, I think, which I'm blanking on the title of. So I was going to look it up real quick while I was talking. But man, they had some solid stuff. They're really a solid band. I saw them with Green Day and Weezer last year, and they were actually a surprise on the bill. At least for me, I didn't pay attention to who else. Fall Out Boy was also there.
In the Wild was the name of that.
Yeah, there you go.
Right.
Yeah, and that title track was really strong. That one, but that I was weighing like Weezer's done a couple EPs this year that have been mostly silly, and which is fine. You're Weezer,
sure,
but like not completely solid. Like a couple really great, like really good Weezer songs, a couple silly ones that are really fun, and a couple that are fine. And then the Stereo came out with their first album in like, I don't know, 15 years or something, and it was good. But the Interrupters album I felt was a little more cohesive as an album, where the Stereo kind of felt like a bunch of songs that were great songs that were put together, but like it didn't have quite the flow that I like to say this is a great album, you know?
Yep. I'm inclined to agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I love the Interrupters album personally. I'm a sucker for a good trombone, and like, yeah, their horn section was off the hook, man. They were so good. Yeah. Like that on its own, I loved it for.
Now, a little stupid trivia for you. Where was the first place that you two know Amy Interrupter from? Where's the first origin point that you remember seeing her? Was it the Interrupters?
Yeah, for me it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. She had a little she kind of looked like a heavy metal chick for a while. Excuse my derogatory chick term, but she
That's
had
what she got. Real
Chicks dig it. Don't worry.
Yeah, chicks dig it.
She had the opening theme for that horrible Birds of Prey show that was on the WB back in the day.
Oh my God, that was her.
And I looked it up, and it was her, and because I actually enjoyed that song. And she had an entire album that was completely bootleg. It never got released, and it circulated on Napster or whatever the hell it was back then. And it was fabulous. It was a lot of fun. And but since they never released it, she could never play any of those songs. And so she ended up releasing alternate versions of a lot of the tracks, but they had never quite hit the same. So all of a sudden I hear this band that sounded like the Distillers with a horn section, and I'm like, who is this? And I'm like, that voice sounds so familiar. And it was sure as shit, it was her. And I was like,
holy crap.
All right.
That's funny.
So, yeah, a little bit of background trivia for you.
That's cool, man.
That show was like 20 years ago, right?
Yeah, it was a long time ago.
Yeah.
That's the thing, is if you find it now, I think they've stripped that song out of it for the title sequence. So it's even more trivia. So.
Like they did with Dawson's Creek. I don't know if you guys my
I
girlfriend watches Dawson's Creek, and I like when she started rewatching it, I remember hearing the theme song being like, that's not the fucking theme song. I remember it was that I don't want to wait. And they completely changed it. And I was like, oh, I'm not a fan.
Wow. I'm going to have to look that up because I don't care about Dawson's Creek at all, but I'm curious what the hell they replaced that with.
That's that's a whole episode of like stuff we could talk about, because they stripped so many punk songs out of like Return of the Living Dead. Like if you watch the movie now, there's so many songs that got stripped out of it for rebroadcast and putting it out on DVD and Blu-ray and everything. I think they came close with one of the last releases, but yeah, there's so many things like that have had music stripped out of it that people will never know about because it just disappeared.
One big one that I came across recently was my son right now is really into Sonic the Hedgehog.
Oh.
And Sonic the Hedgehog 3 was the music was done by Michael Jackson.
Oh shit.
Yeah. But if you get the latest release of it, they redid the tracks, like they did alternate versions of the tracks.
Interesting.
Because they don't have the rights to all that music. Yeah.
I'll say it again. Corporate bullshit getting into music ruins everything.
Yep.
Yeah. I'd say the only I'm going to go off on a tangent for a brief second here, but the only time I saw corporate people being a boon was Frank Zappa said this back in the day, was like,
I was going to say,
the only time it was good was when it was a bunch of old white guys that didn't know what they were doing. They were like, just put out whatever hell you want. As long as it makes us money, we don't care.
Yep.
So, that's the only time it was good. But once people started paying attention and nickel and dime and everything, that's when it went out. So
yeah, see, for me, it's not about like if there are people who know how to get rich, who just know how they're good with money. I'm not one of those fucking people. I need those people. So if you're good with money, let me know. I got art for you. We can use
a sponsor.
Yeah, I got art for you. But by the same token, like, I'm not going to get in the way of how someone makes money. All I ask is that they don't get in the way of how I make my music, or make my comics or whatever it happens to be. I really think that there should be a sort of like separation of church and state that has disappeared in the last while.
Well, absolutely.
Yeah. When I learned that labels owned music, I was like, that makes no fucking sense.
Yeah.
Then you got the labels screwing the band, and then you got like Spotify screwing the label, screwing the band, and
right. Yeah, it's a human centipede of getting fucked.
Yeah.
Who's in the middle? I don't know.
Yeah. Oh man. Anyway, we should talk about good things. Other awesome albums.
Oh yeah. Eric, did you?
Yeah, you go ahead.
Yeah,
okay. Go ahead. I basically had narrowed it down to Pkew Pkew Pkew. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but and Wet Leg and Grumpster. And I think I settled on Pkew 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 because they just I've had a rough year. And sometimes you just need, I'd kind of almost refer to this last album as like party punk. It was kind of, there's a lot of beer drinking. There's a lot of talking about a new pope, which was really interesting.
Dude, that is my favorite.
Yeah,
I was dying laughing listening to that. It was so on point. Like, and like the way his day progressed too, because he told it like two different ways in the end. Like it was amazing.
Yeah, and it was that kind of thing where, a lot of them I was listening to in the car on the way back and forth to visit my wife. She's been about a half an hour away, so it's a good time to just listen to some stuff. And that one is by far the album that made me step on the gas a lot more and made me happy to be, like doing what I was doing. And it's like, as much as I liked Grumpster and everything like that, it didn't have that same push to it in the car. And it was just, I love it. I absolutely loved that new album by Grumpster, which I can't remember the name of to save my life right now. But it just didn't have, it was a little bit emo in some ways, like the vocals on it, but some of it oddly was really on point for the car conversation, because I think the second song is called Crash, and it's basically about exactly what it sounds like. So, and the third album would be Wet Leg, and I don't know if you guys have listened to that one, but it's
fucking awesome.
It's just fabulous, and I think it's got such a dominant bass line throughout most of it that it's almost the most recognizable bass just by listening to it since the beginning of that Fugazi song that I can never forget. So it's that kind of recognizable, that kind of, and her deadpan delivery on some of it with some of the most intelligent lyrics that I've heard out there. It's just really tongue-in-cheek, really fun.
For me, it was the contrast between the low bass line and the soaring vocals, because she's got a really high range, and the two of them together is just like perfect marriage,
Yeah. And when it kicks in too, because they have a really mellow intro a lot of the time, and then all of a sudden they do that quick like intro to it, and it kicks in and it's fabulous.
One song in particular, Too Late Now, sweetest beat on the fucking album, man. They do this, I'm pretty sure that they had some electric pads on the kit when they were doing it, and they had like a couple little background sounds that you can barely just hear but put your headphones on and listen for that, and it just kind of like, it centers the song. It's so beautiful. I love shit like that, like the little subtle stuff that you don't really notice the first listen. That's my jam. I love that stuff.
I listened to that when it was not 1,000 degrees out here and I could actually still take a walk during the daytime. That was something I would put on, and it was wonderful to just get lost to. Like in your head. It just, you drown everything else in the world out. It was great. So that's enough about Wet Leg. I guess I seem to have gone off more about Wet Leg than I did about Pkew Pkew Pkew, but still. Okay, I'm done.
Yeah, I really love that Wet Leg album. It was refreshing. It felt like it was grounded in something that it wasn't like, I listened to some weird ass shit. And so like when I was listening to that, it wasn't like, I didn't require all of my conscious attention to understand what was going on, but it's still, I was reading, what's the name of the comic? Geezer. I was reading Geezer as I was listening to it. And there were just moments where I'd be like, oh, that's cool. I dig that, where it just kind of like re-enters your mind. I love shit like that. Yeah. It reminded me of Metric kind of, but a little less dancey, a little more on the, I don't know, the shoegaze side, I guess, because it had some cool things going on in the background.
I think Metric has kind of gotten more mellow. That last album that just came out a couple months ago tended to be a little more on the mellow side of her.
For sure.
Too.
Yeah.
So they've gotten there that way over the years. But yeah, I totally get what you're saying. The old Metric was definitely a lot more electronic background and everything. Love them too.
Yeah.
Awesome. So you mentioned Geezer. Is that a good time to transition to talking about Geezer? comic on Kickstarter earlier this year, or was that at the end of last year?
I think it might have been the end of last year.
It just came in the mail recently.
Hold on.
You got the book? Oh yeah.
That's
Nice.
I don't have the bag with me, but
nice little packaging for it looked like a little record store bag, and it was just perfect.
That's great.
packaging.
yeah, they did a really great job on that. And that was actually one of the things that I really loved about the book, was like some of the authenticity it added. Like when I first put out my blister novel, not the transition to me, but in the back I did like this. I've removed it. Well, it's in the novel, but I didn't put it in the comic. I did like this zine interview in the back that takes place after the novel to let you know like kind of what happens to the characters. And that was one of the things I really liked about this one. They had like news clippings, and
Yeah, it was awesome.
yeah, like very authentic looking. So that was
They had they had a ad for the single, and like within the comic itself, a lot of the stuff was after the book, but it was interviews, it was reviews of their band and the rival band that was trying to like kind of beat them out at the local shows, and then just some of the authenticity of the stuff in the Brit-Pop scene back then. And we won't ruin it too much, but basically the Gallaghers from Oasis and Blur might make little appearances, and just some of the record stores, the albums in the background were well recreated. And actually, if you blew up the PDF, which I did because my eyes are horrible because I'm old, but there was a wet leg sticker on one of the little records.
Oh, that's badass.
I was just like, all right, that kind of ties in even better. So
yeah, very cool. Very cool.
Really,
yeah,
really
it felt like reading like a non-superhero Scott Pilgrim kind of thing, because like coming from Toronto, like what fascinated me about Scott Pilgrim was like, oh my God, they're playing Lee's Palace. Oh my God, they're playing the Velvet Underground. And it's like, I've been to those places. I've been on those stages. That's so cool. Yep. And this had the same feel where like, they're in Camden Town looking through records, and it's like, I can picture walking into that store and like looking at that particular shelf and that kind of thing. It was very cool.
And they were saying the dive bars that they went into where they, got the fights and everything, that were real bars. And, they were places everybody hung out during that time scene in the 90s. And it was just great to see. Yeah, exactly. That kind of authenticity.
Yeah, I can appreciate that kind of like love letter to a scene.
Yeah. I have a question for you guys though, because this is a punk oriented podcast. Now, reading the comic, it felt very clear to me that the sort of main character, Martin, is not Brit-Pop. He's punk.
Yeah, it was definitely a different.
He's fuck the system. He wants to like, shove it up your ass with walnuts. Like, he's not interested in playing ball. So where do you feel the line is between punk rock and Brit-Pop? Because they feel close to each other when you're reading this. Like, you can feel kind of the tide changing a little bit.
And honestly, I don't think I would have called some of the bands that they mentioned, like Blur. I don't know if I would have called them Brit-Pop back in the day. But I guess I didn't really think about those terms.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't either. Really.
Right.
I loved Oasis as a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it's a matter of. And I think to the question about where's that line with punk, I think that's going to come up with the podcast itself. And I'd say as long as it has that punk aesthetic and that punk attitude, and that comes across, then I don't, as long as we're having fun discussing stuff, screw it.
That's how I felt too, was like, as I was reading it, I realized like I've been wrong about Oasis the whole time. Those guys are punk as fuck.
Yeah, well, just think of all the news articles back in the day.
Yeah,
and stuff like they were
getting hammered, punching people in the face.
Exactly.
Yeah, totally.
Gallagher just beat the shit out of somebody. Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Yeah, I remember. The same thing happened with Jack White and the Libertines back in like the early 2000s, and like I never would have considered Jack White to be punk necessary, but he's punk as hell, man. He makes his own guitars. Like, what am I talking about? Why do I make these boxes?
And they're pressing their own vinyl at Third Man.
Yeah, that's right.
So absolutely.
He was really pushing to bring back the vinyl scene.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure.
More accessible.
Yep.
Yeah.
No,
And that's kind of like, to me, I was just thinking that like maybe genrefying things is let the historians worry about that. You know what I mean? Like, you can call it Brit-Pop, you can call it whatever you want. What was it doing at the time? Like, how did people react to it at the time? And like, why was it a phenomenon? You know?
Exactly.
Yeah, and so much. I mean, so much of punk like has to do with politics here and there. Like, I mean, it's heavy in punk, but it's also, I mean, any kind of British arts, like they're crazy about their politics over there. Like,
Yeah, they are.
so I think there's that. They share that a bit too.
Definitely. So, what would you say are like the punk bands that when you heard them when you were a kid, you were like, oh shit, this is it?
I like very specifically when I was like, because I was very They Might Be Giants, REM, like early '90s. So one morning I remember putting on MTV, and Offspring came on, Self Esteem.
Yup.
And it was like I hadn't, I mean, I'd heard things, but I didn't never really heard like that. And then followed by Basket Case, Green Day.
Wow.
And it was like a 1-2 punch of like, I mean, those were like the two big ones at that time. And it was every morning they played at the same time on MTV. Like, it was, so like I just would sit down with my cereal and eat it, and my mom hated it. And it would play across the front room, and just kind of opened me up to like Weezer and all the different indie and Bad Religion. And so like, I guess I'd have to say them for me, like at first.
For me, I'm a little older than everybody in the group by a little bit. So I came up in the 80s. So I'd say Minor Threat, Fugazi, Dead Kennedys, Circle Jerks. That was kind of my jam back in the day. I remember that 6-song, the Red Fugazi EP. Just like, we had it on cassette, and we had one of those cassette players back in the day that just kind of flipped it over and kept playing. And we were in a pool, and nobody wanted to get out to be the one to change the music. So we listened to those 6 songs about 10 times in a row, and nobody got sick of it. It was just that good. That album is one of my favorites of all time.
I still have it on my phone, man.
Oh God, it's so great.
Yeah. For me, well, you know, I had a love-hate relationship with punk rock when I first got into it. Like, you were saying, John, that like you grew up in a house that had no music. I had the exact opposite. My mom was a folk singer when I was a little kid, and my stepdad was a musician. Like, he would play guitar on the weekends, and he had a microphone and an amp, and like my living room became a stage. And he was into all the old 50s stuff, like Elvis and Johnny Cash and Charlie Pride and you know, come on baby, do a twist, over and over again in my house, you know.
Yep.
So
You're gonna get hit my ass cap for that.
I hope not. I think Chuck Berry's estate is doing okay. But yeah. But so when I first heard Green Day, I was like, you know, compared to what I had been listening to, I was like, it's intense, but I don't know if I like it. You know, I got into the Dookie album, but again, it was like I was listening to it because it was popular, but I didn't know if I liked it.
Yeah.
But it was Propaganda that really got me into punk, where I was like, oh, this is more like, it felt like Rage Against the Machine, but with like a knife in your hand. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Rage was angry, but these guys were like, come get me, bitch. Today's Empire's Tomorrow's Ashes really kind of like reawakened something that I didn't realize had been sleeping for a long time. And I didn't get into it until I was like 19. And then after that, it was off to the races. It was punk rock for days. And then I got into metal after that. But yeah, I kind of took a bit of a long route to get into the heavy stuff.
Yeah, John's a metal guy too. I never was a metal guy.
Yeah, I came up on my first concert was Kiss and a horrible band called King Cobra. Actually, they weren't horrible, but yeah, it was like I saw like that was my first big crush on a band was, Kiss was, everything when I was a little kid,
Sure.
and it was my first concert. It was, they were my first. So as a kid, the bunch of weirdos like, singing about crazy stuff, the
Yeah.
demon on stage and crap like that. It was phenomenal back then.
They get a bad rap now because Gene Simmons can't shut his mouth for 5 minutes. But
That's
like,
my problem. It's like
yeah,
I was talking to my buddy who I used to go to these shows with recently, and I said, "Hey, what the nice thing used to be is you'd only be able to read about these bands in the crappy circus magazine Hit Parader and the weird Kerrang and
Revolver,
things like that.
Kerrang,
Like,
yeah.
you'd have to search these articles out to find out what the hell these guys were talking about. Now it's like you just flip on Facebook and it's like Gene Simmons said something stupid. It's like
Try being a Smiths fan.
this is true. And you'd never get to see a concert because he never shows up. So
I saw him a couple
Morrissey
years ago.
canceled too? Like, pretty sure Morrissey got canceled. Like,
he gets canceled every 6 months.
right?
He
Yeah.
has to come out and
Yeah.
say something crazy.
and then he gets
Yeah,
renewed and yeah.
I kind of feel bad for these guys though, because like they didn't know what they were signing up for when, like, in 1984 or whatever, when they hit the top and like they became millionaires and people started hanging on their every word. They weren't expecting Twitter.
Right.
They didn't have that in the plan, And now it's like, yeah, of course Gene Simmons is a fucking idiot. Like, what is he? He's the bass player with the longest tongue in all of music. It's nothing against Kiss. They make great music, but he shouldn't be making public policy, obviously.
Yeah.
And why are we expecting that out of our musicians?
It's harder
a
to
little much.
give Morrissey that pass though, because he uses his platform against me and all. Like he
Sure.
uses his platform against things. So anything he says, he's trying to be heard.
Yeah, I just think as the public, we shouldn't be giving them as much credit. I mean, because I've met a lot of people that can play bass really well. I wouldn't necessarily vote for them.
Right.
Yeah, that's just kind of my feeling. Is like making great art and understanding how to manage social systems or like have opinions on abortion. They're not necessarily the same shit. I wish they knew that though.
Right.
Yeah, it's like maybe just put the mute button on once in a while, buddy.
Right,
All I
yeah.
ask of you.
Yeah. Absolutely. So local scene stuff. I guess, yeah, we kind of talked about our influences and what kind of brought us here. So like local music, what was it that got you going to shows? Because that's a separate entity on its own, right?
Yeah. So my first show was to see the Smoking Popes with Alligator Gun in Chicago. I started listening to the local music show on like Sunday night on our local station, and actually, the Smoking Popes at that time, they had already had a song on the radio, so I was hearing it there, and I fell in love with them. So I went out and saw their show, and actually at their show, before the show, when like they play all the music, and because I got there really early, was the first time I ever heard Jawbreaker, which is like my favorite band of all time now. So yeah, it was just radio, I guess, at the time was something.
Yeah.
Okay, here's where my cat becomes an asshole.
That's cool. That's cool. What about you?
For me,
live
I started doing, like I said, I started with stadium shows because it was the easiest thing back in the day. We didn't really have any clubs where I was, and I didn't have any, I wasn't old enough to have a buddy that could travel to a club or anything like that. So started with, the big metal bands of the day like Kiss and Judas Priest and, stuff like that. And then when I was able to get to clubs, I think my first club show was either Fugazi at the Anthrax in Connecticut or Jane's Addiction at this little club in Northampton, Massachusetts called Pearl Street. And
Very
it was
cool.
just this tiny little room, and I barely knew anything about them. And like Perry Farrell comes out on stage, and he's just, I'm sure you've seen the pictures of the old school act, and he came out in a corset with basically fuchsia dreads and just insane looking, and just comes out.
That's what I'm going to wear in the next episode, by the way.
Oh, excellent. But he comes out and he rips a condom open, like kind of wiggles it onto his tongue and spits it out in the audience. And then they just kick in the mountain song. And I was like, what the fuck just happened? I was like, I don't even know what's happening right now. But I
think somebody has that condom on their shelf today.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah,
probably. I got spit on by Johnny Urine of Mindless Self-Indulgence when they played a show here in Toronto.
Did you get tested shortly afterwards?
I should have, but I considered it a sign of honor.
Yeah.
In retrospect, I probably should have had a better honor system, but
I would be the same way. I actually loved them when he didn't get canceled. But
that show was fucking insane. It might have been the craziest show I've ever seen. They spent the first 3 songs trying to prank each other with a jar of peanut butter and like shoving it down each other's asses. But this is the best part is like, I say that and people are picturing them jamming peanut butter down each other's asses. You're not also picturing them now picking up a pick and playing their guitar
Sweet Jesus.
with an ass peanut covered hand. Like, it's just ridiculous. And then I think it was like the second last song, Johnny looked up at the crowd on the balcony and he was like, what are you guys doing up there? All the fun's happening down here. Check it out. And spit in the crowd. And he like the side of my head. Yeah. One guy did a front flip off of one of the speakers. I thought he was going to die. The speakers were probably about 15 feet in the air, maybe 20 feet in the air. And this guy somehow, we watched him parkour his way up onto the top of the speaker. And then as the breakdown for the song started, he did a front flip. And I thought everybody was going to be like, nope. And that was going to be the end for him, but they caught him.
Wow.
So, rock and roll won that day.
Yeah, I saw them around here. They were just phenomenal. They're ridiculous live.
Yeah.
I remember that was where I remember transitioning to be the old guy in the punk crowd, though, because my wife had a little pack of Kleenex and some kid came out of the pit, all bloody nose and everything like that.
And she was like, "Here, let me take care of it."
She goes over to him with the Kleenex and she's like, "Can I offer you a Kleenex? I want to help you." And it was the most adorable thing I've ever seen.
That's so sweet. Yeah. Shout out to all the punk moms out there.
Yeah.
The first show that really. Actually, I got to say, this show was the reason I became a musician, to be honest with you. It was a little band called Scratching Post from Toronto. And they were one of the first kind of bands in the indie scene that I remember having a social media presence or an online presence on MySpace. And they had a forum that was doing quite well. Like they had thousands of people. And I was really involved in that. And then they had a show coming up at a place that no longer exists called the Reverb, God rest their soul. And that place is amazing. And it was an afternoon show. So like when we left, it still wasn't, dusk yet, but they had to do an early afternoon show because there was the Reverb was also a fetish club and it was going to be a Friday night. And it's like, they're not losing money on the fetish club. It's not happening.
Yeah.
So they ended up wrapping the show up around 8:00. And at one point, the drummer broke a stick and threw the broken stick into the crowd. And I caught the stick. I was like, holy shit, this is so cool. And I was obsessed with Scratching Post. I thought they were amazing. I had a massive crush on the lead singer. She was smoking hot. And then at the end of the show, I went up to each of the band members, was like, can you sign my stick? And they all did, and then the lead singer, I was like, hi, can you sign my stick, please? And she was like, I would love to. And she was like, what'd you think of the show? And we started chatting, and she was like talking about, like the struggles of being a musician and how they almost went broke. And like, then, things are starting to turn around for them and they feel really good about the music scene here. And they're like, do you play anything? I was like, I like to play the drums sometimes. And, but it was after I left that I was like, oh, these are just people. Like I used to think of them as like these sort of deities. And after meeting them, I was like, oh yeah, I could be a musician. It's just a job. I was like, holy shit. Okay. And I joined a band like a year later.
Yeah. Like I said, I think that was the best thing that ever happened to me was interviewing bands for music review. It it just the same experience. Like I said, it just brought them, I mean, yes, they're always going to be a little elevated in my book, but
Of course.
it made me realize they're human. So
Mhm.
it was very
Mhm.
nice.
Yeah.
All right.
Do you guys have any parting things we need to talk about, or because we've been going an hour?
Yeah, I think if you guys want to run through like what you're working on again real quick briefly, like we talked about a little bit at the beginning, but I forgot to share Ben's logo. So
Oh yeah, I'll do that. I'll talk about it again. Primalnote.com is where you can go to find all the information you need. We have a YouTube channel where we post all of our videos of studio and live performances. This September, we're going to be back at a rapidly growing music festival here in the Greater Toronto area called Gussapalooza. We played there last year. We recorded all their stuff. So last year is on the channel. You can watch all the performances. And this year, our focus is going to be on band interviews. Now that we've gotten to know a lot of these guys, we want to, pick their brain a little bit. And yeah, so we've been doing that. We're also building rehearsal studios in Toronto. So Primal Note Studios is well on its way. Currently we're doing open houses to show people the rooms that we've completed and start getting a pre-sale going. So we have a good list of people that are already interested. But if you're in the Toronto area and you're looking for a rehearsal space, something monthly or even hourly, and you don't know where to go, we got you hooked up. So just let us know. And Pioneer Anomaly is one of the bands I'm in. Space Punk. We are working on new stuff all the time, but we're also building studios, so that's kind of on the back burner at the moment. And I'm also in a band called Mute Sounds, instrumental post-rock band, headed by a survivor of throat cancer. He lost his voice and started making music as a way of still expressing himself. He's an amazing, beautiful human being, and I'm very privileged to be in a band with him. So we're working on a new album. I wrote a comic called Apex. You can find it on Linktree. You can follow me on Instagram, Apex the comic. At Mohini Eats. Don't look it up. It's fine. We'll worry about it later.
I'll think it on screen at some point.
Yeah, that's about it. I'm done. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm John MacLeod, and I work with Bad Bug Media. You can find our stuff at badbugmedia.com, although we do a lot more through Kickstarters and things like that to fund our books. We've, got a book out every couple months. We've got a couple out right now, and my brain is blanking on everything, of course. But we've got a lot of exciting stuff coming up in the next year.
Are you guys Black Jackets? Is that you?
Yes, Black Jackets. And then
badass.
We had a music comic called Ragnarok. And
Pioneer is on the one of the backer tiers.
That's a Bad Bug book. So yeah, that was a great promotion. They had a cassette tape that had 6 bands that were also people that were into comic books, and Ben was I found out after the fact that he was on it, and I had already dug the hell out of his band, so I was very happy to find out that we were going to be working together. So
thank you, sir.
Other than that, I'm basically doing writing and editing for whoever will take me, and if anybody wants to give me a large bag of money, so feel free to hit me up.
I would also like a large bag of money.
Okay.
I'm not opposed.
Eric, what you got?
So this is the proof copy of my blister 211 page book. Super excited to get that out in the next month. And I've been working on launching Muck Spout. This podcast is part of the big launch. I have in October my audiobook podcast that I work on with Chuck Pino comes out. We write and I do the sound work for it. It's a time travel adventure.
It's fantastic, by the way. I just want to say
I
thoroughly enjoy reading it. And shout out to Chuck Pino. He's sort of our connection that started all this.
Yeah, Chuck's a great guy, great co-writer. So we had a funny, was it 2 weeks ago now? C2E2. We were signing books together. It's the first time we've ever been able to do that, which was really cool. But we had a moment where he met a guy, and then he introduced me as his co-writer, and I was like, "What? You're my co-writer." That ended up becoming a back and forth joke all day.
Technically, you're each other's co-writer. That's fine.
Everybody's sidekick. It's okay.
Yeah, exactly.
And then coming up at the end of September is the Punk the Burbs Fest 5.
Cool.
And I'm excited about the Bull Weevils being on there. Much the same, Counterpunch, Kalimasi. And you can get tickets on Eventbrite. So that's pretty exciting. It's the first time I've ever
Very cool.
done anything like that. I'll have a table there with my books and pins and all kinds of fun stuff.
Excellent.
Awesome.
So this has been a good time, guys.
Yeah.
We should definitely do it again.
Yeah, maybe we should do this regularly. What do you think?
That sounds good to me.
So when's the next one going to be? We should probably talk about that.
Maybe we'll set a date offline, but for recording.
Okay.
But,
Coming soon. Yeah.
Cool.
Definitely be following it up pretty quick.
Beautiful.
All right. Thanks for watching and listening, however you're intaking this. And maybe we'll come up with some kind of like thing to say at the end. But I have nothing right now.
That's pretty good. I like that. We should do that.
That's a good one. All right. All right. Later, everybody.
All right. Have a good one, guys.
Peace out.